Diego,
Sí,
ya vamos a comenzar.
vale.
Ya.
Ok, ahí sí.
Ya vamos a comenzar.
Ok, listo. Vale. Hola. Hola a todas y todos.
Recording in
¿Cómo están?
progress.
Espero que estén muy bien. Muchas gracias por conectarse, por ir sumándose a nuestro primer panel virtual en Conecta 2022. Estamos saliendo en este momento por Facebook, por YouTube. También hay gente que está participando en el web seminar, en el Zoom, por si necesitan también traducción simultánea, corran a conectarse al Zoom también. Toda la información también está ahí en las redes sociales de CCDoc. Y estamos muy contentos y contentas porque hoy día la idea es un poco reflexionar sobre un tema que es parte de lo que está ocurriendo hoy día, que son las audiencias, ¿no? Las audiencias no solo en el mundo documental, sino que también en el mundo audiovisual en general, a través de la televisión, también el cine, pero la televisión ha tenido que adaptarse y empezar a pensar nuevas preguntas en torno a cómo abordar más y mejores audiencias, con la existencia de las nuevas plataformas, con la existencia también de nuevos espacios que hoy día compiten por esa audiencia, y luego de una pandemia de 2 años, de alguna manera podemos empezar a pensar que estas audiencias también han cambiado, han variado hacia las plataformas, pero también creemos que han variado hacia el mundo de la televisión. Y es por eso que hoy día nos acompañan dos importantes invitados que están participando con nosotros en Conecta este año. Está con nosotros Keoni Kailimai, que se conecta de hecho directamente de Hawái, representando a Storyville, uno de los slots más importantes de documentales de la BBC en UK. Y también está con nosotros Erika Dilday, que nos acompaña hoy día representando a POV de PBS, que también va a estar también dándonos su perspectiva en torno a cuáles son también esos desafíos que las audiencias post pandemia y en la realidad actual están entregando. Y para moderar esta conversación, para ir compartiendo también ciertas dudas que ustedes tengan, está con nosotros María José Díaz, productora de Galgo Storytelling, una empresa chilena que trabaja también proyectos documentales en distintas áreas y formatos, y está para acompañarnos también en esta conversación. Así que muchas gracias, Erika, muchas gracias, Keoni, por participar. También nos acompaña Camila Delgado, intérprete de señas de lenguas chilenas, y también está con nosotros B y C Traducciones, que está ahí integradas por las dos chicas, y Chico, que nos está acompañando con la traducción en inglés y español. Así que los dejo en manos de María José, que de ahora en adelante va a guiar esta conversación. Y cualquier cosa, tanto en las redes como en el seminario, pueden hacer sus preguntas, porque ahí María José va a estar atenta de poder tomar algunas en este ratito que tenemos. Así que bienvenidos, bienvenidas. María José, es tuyo el escenario.
Muchas gracias, Diego. And hi, everyone. And thank you so much. This is a great pleasure and honor to be here with Keoni and Erika. And I would love if you both could introduce yourselves to all the audience that is connected right now and watching this this conversation that we're having. And I'd love if maybe, Erika, we could start with you and tell us a little bit more about yourself and also about the slot that you represent and what do you do, what are you looking for, and what are you, what kind of documentaries and content is the slot that you represent?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. I love the Connective Festival and I'm happy to be a part of it. And I started, just a little bit about me, I started in documentary about 25 years ago. as a student at Columbia Journalism School. And since then, I have run Maisels Documentary Center, where I worked with Albert Maisels. And then I also ran Futuro Media, which is organization started by the journalist María Hinojosa, who is one of the premier Latin American journalists in the United States. And 2 years ago now, I came over to run American Documentary. And that's the organization I'm at now. We have 2 programs. The one that you may be familiar with is POV. And each year we program 15 to 16 documentaries for the American television audience. Each documentary we show is viewed by about 2 million people in the United States. We also program POV shorts, and the series in POV shorts won Best Series at IBA Awards just last week. And then we have a show on the World Channel called America Reframed. And that is looking at different ways of seeing America. What we try and do is bring our audiences things that they wouldn't see. POV is the longest running program on American television that shows documentaries. And over the years, we've moved into doing more and more international documentaries. We used to have 2 or 3 documentaries a year that were from outside of the United States. Now at least half of our documentaries are from outside of the United States. So what we're looking for are good stories told authentically, that have a point of view, and that will bring our audiences to understand other people, to ask questions, to think, things that will really help them connect in a way that they couldn't connect with other audiences.
Wow, amazing, amazing. And Keoni, what about you? What's the slot? How would you describe the slot that you represent today?
That I represent. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Apologies if I sound a little rough. A couple of things. I'm getting over a cold from last week. But I also just woke up. It's 4 a.m. here, and so I feel like it's hearing.
And we are connected like since 30 minutes ago. So you woke up at
so I had
3:30 or something like that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I had some time, but yeah, I was still sleeping.
No worries. We understand. Yes, no worries. We understand.
I was sleepwalking into this. So hi everyone, I'm Keoni. I'm one of the commissioning editors for BBC Storyville. So I hope I'm not confusing you guys. I'm connecting right now from Hawaii, which is where I am from, and I grew up and my family still live, but I am based at the BBC in the United Kingdom, in London. And we run the BBC's international feature documentary strand. So every year we commission and program 25 to 30 films from the world documentary stage. It's a really big mix of British commissions, but also films from the festival circuit, films from independent producers, first-time filmmakers, co-productions with partners like POV or Independent Lens, Arte, other European partners, and some kind of small scale development schemes that we run in Britain. We're the only remaining place on British television for international feature documentaries. And we represent the public broadcaster. So we broadcast on BBC 4 in the UK. If anyone is familiar with the BBC's output, we are probably most known for world news, which is what lots of international viewers will see. But in the UK, we are the premier broadcaster. So we run 4 linear channels: BBC 1, BBC 2, BBC 3, and BBC 4. And we also run a national streaming service called BBC iPlayer, where all of our films are available. So we program to a slot still on BBC 4, but increasingly we're actually looking to program to a streaming audience, and that this is part of a massive BBC digital first strategy to help kind of bring our services into the future and into audiences who aren't necessarily tuning in on linear television. So yeah.
Let's talk about audiences, because before the pandemic and after the pandemic, of course, the world has changed, and also the audiences has changed, right? So I wonder if did you feel the change in your audiences, maybe in the numbers of your rating, and how are you facing these changes, if they are or not? Because from the pandemic, a lot of people stayed at home and watched a lot more television, but maybe not linear television, maybe not from the television, maybe it was from streaming. So I'd love to know more, if you could tell us how did you feel that change, and how are you facing it? So maybe we can start. You can choose, like Erika or Keoni. I think Keoni, are you like kind of?
Yeah.
I want to talk.
I don't know. Well, I think Britain is a few kind of general things happened, I feel like, with our audience that perhaps were experienced around the world. But I think also in the UK, we experienced some things that are probably quite specific to the United Kingdom and to the BBC, and the way that I think probably just the history of what the BBC represents for the country as a whole. So I think I agree with you. A lot of audiences kind of came to new content over the pandemic. People were stuck at home. They were trying to watch new things. They were trying to fill their time. And I think a lot of our kind of linear colleagues, a lot of our colleagues from other broadcasters were saying how they experienced a kind of disappearance of some audiences. And I think for us, we kind of experienced people coming to the BBC and coming to Storyville and finding us incidentally. The BBC is the main broadcaster of the United Kingdom. It's watched by, upwards of, probably 2/3 or even 3/4 of the whole country every single day. We operate radio stations, TV stations, live performance, podcast platforms, streamers. And so the infiltration into the kind of into the public and into the public sphere is kind of is really, it's a really big presence, and people relied a lot on the BBC as a central point of information during the pandemic and as a kind of national unity. Things like soap operas and national TV programs that have been running for decades. And I think we found that audiences who hadn't come to our documentaries previously kind of happened upon them because they went further into the BBC kind of archives and world. My previous boss, Mandy Chang, who has now departed the BBC, she kind of, alongside Joe Lapping, who now heads up unscripted acquisitions, they kind of undertook a massive process of putting our older documentaries from the archive that were still in license up on the streaming platform. And this really helped people come to the Strand and see us as a place for premium documentaries. It wasn't something that we were thinking of before the pandemic. We were just focusing, kind of sprinting to the linear premiere and trying to get everything done, trying to get deliveries, trying to do the edits, trying to do the artwork, the posters, the synopses, and just trying to get everything finished for that one evening. And what we found was that if we put more energy actually into protecting these films and showcasing them up on the digital platform, that people would not only come to one of the films, but then they'd go to the next film. And then next week they'd come back and look in the library again and see, okay, I watched this really amazing film from Storyville. Maybe they've got something else up now. Maybe there's other things in the catalog. And we realized that as a brand, as a strand, it was really important for people to see our whole catalog during the pandemic and see it as a destination, rather than as a kind of passing chance, or if they happened to be free on the night of the premiere or the night of the broadcast.
Wow.
Those are just a few of my first impressions.
So the pandemic kind of helped you in that way, like, okay, let's use this again. Let's take advantage of the work that is already done.
Yeah, in a weird way, the pandemic helped us. I mean, you know, I think similar to lots of other premium documentary strands, or kind of, you know, historical strands that have been on broadcast for years or decades, our audience is older. Our audience are people in their 50s and 60s and 70s. They're affluent. They usually are kind of very pinpointed geographically in the country. And what we know for sure is that before the pandemic, they weren't young. They were less young. And, you know, and the funny thing is that our documentaries skewed younger than the general BBC viewing. So if you think of some of the soap operas or some of the kind of daytime programming, or some of the evening, you know, unscripted or even drama programming, a lot of that BBC viewership does skew older. It's a much more kind of mature, settled audience. And we found that in the pandemic, our documentaries were able to attract much younger viewers. And when I say much younger, I mean, I'm not saying, you know, teenagers, but viewers in their 40s, viewers in their 30s, viewers in their 20s. And we were able to start growing a kind of recognition amongst a younger set of the audience. And that kind of helped us. You know, lots of people younger people didn't know what BBC Storyville was. It was something that kind of only existed around an older generation, and I think that's something that over, you know, through the work of some of the commissioners who came before me, and also through the circumstances of the pandemic and the digitization of our portfolio, we've been able to really kind of change that and bring in a whole new set of viewers who seek out our programming. It's exciting.
Wow, yes, very exciting and very interesting. And Erika, what about you with the PBS POV? Did it happen something similar? Like, could you find new audiences? Could you maybe the audiences that you already have were were closer to the channel? Let us know a little bit more.
Yes, we definitely did find new audiences. I mean, having people inside gave us an opportunity to get more people to come to what we were doing. And also, I think, like Keoni said, the audience that watches us on the regular television channel is definitely an older, more affluent audience. What we saw was that we were getting more people who watched us via streaming. And also, one of the things that I think was the biggest change was the amount of engagement that we had with our audiences through social media. People were looking for more ways to connect. So we got more information. People would give us feedback on what they thought of a show, or ask about things that had been on in the past. And it was a really good way to interact with audiences and to learn what they liked and didn't like. And one of the things I think that was obvious to us was, one, they were looking for connection. People couldn't leave their houses, so they wanted other ways to connect with the world, and they wanted to connect with a very wide world. So what we brought to them was one of those ways of connection. And number two, I found that they were thinking more deeply about what it was they saw. They had more time to think. They had more time to really give us ideas about, you know, what we should do. One of the big things that we believe in is engagement. It's one thing to get the documentary on the air, but the other thing is, how do we make sure that people are engaging with it and getting as much out of it as possible? And so we held online events. We opened up, you know, question sessions, and they were full. And we found that people really wanted not just to view the documentaries, but to use them to find out how they could learn more about a topic or what they could do about something in particular. So it was very gratifying in that respect.
Wow, that is pretty amazing. But I wonder, what is that relationship right now that the pandemic, it's almost over and people are back in their jobs and they are not inside of their houses anymore? Are they still that relationship and that close relationship you could and the engagement that you were talking about, is that still on, or maybe it changed a little bit?
I find that it's still going on. It's as if people learned a new behavior, a new way of engaging with the type of content that we have. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we did bring in a younger audience. We have more people who are in their 30s and 20s and 30s watching the content that we have than we did before. And they have not lost their desire to engage. I've found that we get more connection through our short series than we did during the pandemic, because people love watching the shorts documentaries. We do about 15 short films each year as well. And so the investment in that time-wise is less. They range from 15 to about 35 minutes. And we've had much more engagement on that channel, and that hasn't slowed down.
Wow. What is the audience of the point of view, mainly?
Well, it's funny listening to Keoni, because the audience he described is our audience as well.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, television is kind of an old media now.
Yeah, it is and it isn't, right? I think it's like, I don't know, when I first started working for the BBC, when I first came to Storyville, I think, I thought when you're a viewer, you think all other viewers look and act like you. You don't understand the kind of scale of kind of big, the big level audience metrics. And I was shocked when I came to work at Storyville that the audience was so much older. I was so shocked. And I mean, we're not even, we're talking audiences who are probably, it's like kind of the average age is, above 65. And I didn't understand that, that could be such a big kind of heartland for our audience. I thought, surely there are other people who are a bit like me. Like, I'm not that much of a weirdo. I'm weird, but I'm not that weird. Where are the other people who are kind of who are like me? And I think we kind of overestimate our circumstances in terms of thinking that it's much more ingrained across a nation or across a region than it actually is. And we find that, people who are living further away from urban epicenters, people who are living further away from centers of wealth, from financial centers, we have to really kind of consider their motives and consider their actions and consider what they want and how they want to absorb media, because it's not going to be in the same way as the heartland, as the people who were kind of super served for years and years and years.
Yes. And would you like to add, Erika, something in that line that Keoni is talking about, that we need to know? Maybe, okay, we think things are this way because we live that way, but maybe the reality is totally different from what we're thinking about.
It is, and I think one of the things that we've realized at POV is that we have to go out and introduce the audiences that we want to engage with the content. So one of the things that we are trying to do is make sure that we connect with community groups and have them show films, whether it's in schools or with other groups who want to do activism or who find what we're doing important that we bring the films to them. An example that we have is a film that we ran last year called On the Divide, which is about the last abortion clinic on the Mexico-Texas border and about the push and pull of trying to keep that clinic open and the people who are working for and against it. There was a group in the state of Kansas that was working to overturn the abortion ban in that state, and they used the film to educate people about what it would mean. And this was a largely youngish group of people who were able to take the film and use it as a tool to introduce people to the issues and to get them to think about them. And eventually they were able as a state to overturn that ban. And that's the kind of thing that we want to see our films do, is for people to take them and use them in ways that will engage people. And one of the things that we're not trying to push people to go one way or the other, we're trying to push them to action. When we have a film, we want people to feel inspired by it. We're not particularly partisan about how we do it, but we want people to feel that they've learned something and that it makes them want to do something. And that's, I think, the way to bring in, for us, younger audiences.
So documentaries have been always be a tool for change, right? Or a tool for awareness, or a tool for, I don't know, maybe they can help changing some realities. So what's the importance of documentaries in public television for using this kind of tool to make changes? How do you use it? Are you using it for world changing in any way?
For us, I think the biggest thing, at least as we're curating our series, is about understanding and knowledge. What we want to make sure that we're giving, especially, there's really no public, I think, more isolated than the American public in Western society. We just don't know as much about what's going on in other places. Part of it is geography, and part of it is just, it's, you know, it hasn't been something that is common to the American public. So one of the things that it's important to us to do is introduce people and ideas and issues that are outside of this country in a way that will get people to really understand and to at least see other people, see how they're living, see what they're doing. One of the films that we had this year, Wuhan, was about Wuhan, China during the early stages of the pandemic, but it was just about regular people and how they were weathering it. And the point was to have people see that the person who drives an Uber, the person who is a psychologist and has to work with a lot of other traumatized people, the person who's a nurse in a hospital is the same as the one that you know next door. And so a lot of it is about fostering, you know, the kind of understanding that will bring us closer. And a lot of it is about helping people learn about things that may be very different from what they know, but they should have some sort of knowledge of.
And what do you think, Keoni, in the UK? Is that similar? Or very different?
UK, it's funny, in the UK, we probably face some similar issues. I mean, I think our circumstances are very different for the British audience, right? I think we're much kind of, as compared to the American audience. I mean, I don't know, it's funny because I grew up in America and then have lived and worked for a decade in Britain, and I don't know, I used to compare the two kind of countries constantly, and now I find more that's different about them than are, you know, I think sometimes goodness, the only things that are similar about these two places are the language, and even that is kind of falling apart at the seams. So I think, for Britain, the UK is much more kind of plugged into world geopolitics and to the kind of goings on of what lots of films, documentary films, might potentially be about. It also sits, Britain also sits in the shadow of America. So everything that kind of happens in the United States ripples through the UK and is felt quite closely in a funny way. I remember we were being asked, there was a really intense but beautiful film about birth control that has been programmed at festivals, at different festivals this year, and it's such an important film about the topic. And we were sat in an editorial meeting talking about the importance of the film. I won't say the name of the film, and we thought, goodness, are we having such a strong reaction to this because we kind of follow in the, it's a film really about the approaches to birth control in the United States, but we feel so strongly about it in Britain because we kind of are so clued into the policies and to the culture in America. I think our programming has to do one main thing at Storyville, and it's bringing the world to the UK and bringing the UK to the world. I think that's the whole point. That was the intention of the Strand when it was set up in the 90s. I think it was at a time when Britain was probably coming out of a very insular period and coming out of a period of very strong editorial output. The BBC commissioned and produced a lot of its own content for years and years. It's the oldest media organization in the world. Over 20,000 people, staff, work for the organization in different capacities. It's a huge operation. I mean, we are running foreign language news channels across the African continent, across Europe, across North, Central, and South America, and Asia. We're running output nationally for the 70 million people that live in the United Kingdom. And I think when they set Storyville up, it was really a time to say what is happening in the world of documentary film out there, rather than, but kind of, can we kind of shift and look at what's happening out in world cinema rather than being so focused on what's happening in British cinema, which was a real priority and still continues to be, as we are the public broadcaster. I think the other kind of tenet of the BBC's output, and especially Storyville's output, is the need for impartiality. We are an impartial editorial organization, and that thread is kind of weaved through every aspect of production and commissioning and acquisition. A lot of people think that even if we acquire their film, or if we show an acquired film, that we don't necessarily carry out the due diligence or carry out the due process that might be involved in a project that we developed. And the answer is just simply no. We have to ensure that everything we are showing on the BBC, that we can stand behind it and say we believe that this is documentary at its core. And I think sometimes we not struggle, but we have to balance this kind of, as a viewer, as a human being. I have this kind of very personal connection to lots of projects or to campaigns or to movements. And I have to constantly kind of put myself behind that and say, how are we trying to help show the truth? How are we trying to help kind of show the story as it is and show the story from an impartial viewpoint?
That's kind of hard, because documentaries are about points of views of directors, and and cinema is politics, and you are taking part.
Exactly.
So how documentaries, at least, I don't know, Chilean documentaries are very political. Latin American documentaries and film are very political. So I have two questions from what you both have said. The first one is how art house or creative documentaries, okay, let's say from Latin America, have a chance to be part of your program. Is that possible, even if you are trying to look this impartial editorial line? And and the second question is, are you interested in some way in Latin Americans documentaries or stories?
I think for sure. I think in terms of impartiality, we mean that we have a kind of requirement to, I think, first of all, it doesn't mean that we won't program your film if it's political. You know, great examples are, you know, The Collective. We boarded the project. We programmed it on Storyville. It actually just fell out of license, but it was available on the BBC streaming platform for a couple of years. And I think that project was a really great example of something that was close to home, but that British audiences had no idea about. For people who don't know about the film, it follows a group of journalists in Romania who are trying to uncover state corruption and the absence of due process in the hospitals, in the public hospitals in Romania, following an accident at a rock concert. And Romania, you know, there are many Romanians who live in the United Kingdom. There's a very big Romanian community. Also, geographically, Romania is not very far away. British culture isn't so ingrained with Romanian culture, but they're familiar with each other. And I feel like the audience thought they knew a lot about what was happening in other European countries, but actually had no idea. And, you know, bringing that film that was actually quite contentious to program a film about another European government was a great opportunity for us to shed light on the truth on what actually is happening. But it just means, in the sense of impartiality, that we had to make sure that the journalism was rock solid, that what was being portrayed was indefensible. Another great example was Welcome to Chechnya, the gay purge. Mandy boarded that project and was really involved in bringing it to a British public. She screened it at Parliament in Westminster, and that screening helped to bring sanctions against Russian policy and Russian politicians. And I think that was something that wasn't in the capacity of the BBC or our roles at the BBC, but obviously was something that, as an executive producer and as producers, we really believe in. And if for people who have seen the film, it's shocking, you know, watching in our modern day and age, communities of queer people being persecuted like this is just so shocking to an audience. And I think what we realized when the British audience came to that film was that these are things they really care about, even though they're not happening in Britain. How that connects to Latin American film, I think, is that yes, we do want your films. We want films from all over the world. And I think Latin America is a really important region, it holds really special stories in terms of the geopolitical struggle, the global North and global South struggle, the class struggle, the race struggle, the indigenous struggle. Meeting some of the one-to-one meetings yesterday, it was just amazing to see the universal nature of some of the stories, even though they're so specific to region and to indigenous language, or to one tiny pocket of the region. And I think that's really special, right? We seek stories that are international, but that have universal themes that speak to people around the world, whether you're a mother or a son or whoever you are. I
And,
think in the past,
mhm.
our Latin American projects have been probably a little less political. But I think that was just the case of the projects that were on the slate at the time, and what we wanted, what we were programming at the time. We programmed The Mole Agent recently, and we co-commissioned, we pre-bought actually a film about a surfer in Peru called Surfing to Survive.
Mhm.
Yeah, and these I mean, those are just a couple of examples. But yeah, I mean, I think we would be interested in political projects from Latin America, and non-political ones.
Yes. And Erika, what about in the US? Because you have a huge Latin American audience, Latin American population. So are you commissioning or are you programming Latin Americans documentaries or stories?
Absolutely. I don't think there has been a season in the past 5 or 6 years, probably longer, where we haven't had at least one, if not more, Latin American documentaries. Keoni mentioned The Mole Agent, which is a good example, which for us was an Oscar-nominated documentary and the centerpiece of season 33, which was a few years ago for us. Every year we have at least a couple of Latin American documentaries. And one of the things that we also do is most of the documentaries that we have are subtitled documentaries. The Latin American documentaries, we're very happy to show documentaries in their native language. And I would say that we welcome them. Political is not a problem. Well-researched and, well-documented journalism is important. But again, we're about a point of view. What we don't like to do is look like we are promoting a particular point of view or a documentary that isn't well done and doesn't meet standards. We have to get it to pass through PBS. And PBS has some very exacting standards as to how the work must be done so that we can show that it has the integrity to be on public broadcasting. But I mean, absolutely, we welcome all sorts of documentaries that are from Latin America. And like I said, every year we program.
Mm-hmm. Now I'd like to ask you both, what's from the slots, from your slots, what are the main challenges that you are going to face in the next 5 or 10 years? What are the challenges for public television? What are the things that you have worked more on to keep your audiences engaged, to keep your content as a very great content, and also very committed with the audiences and the population that you are showing, where you are showing your content?
I would say for us that one of the things that we're most worried about is how streaming is going to continue to affect the marketplace. The channels that are straight streaming often are looking for what will bring in the biggest audience, and I'm afraid that it will push down some of the quality of the documentaries that are available. I find too that we do not get, we are not able to compete financially, even for some of the ones that we want. And part of us having the documentaries out there is not just about having people see them, but having people engage with them, making sure that we are being true to the filmmaker's vision for a documentary in terms of how it's presented, how people engage with it, how it travels throughout the world. We absolutely want numbers, but we also are really committed to a partnership with the filmmaker to have the documentary do what they hoped it would do.
Mm-hmm. Keoni.
I'd agree with that. I mean, I think who knows where public broadcasting will be in 5 years? It's funny, like every time I talk to another kind of professional, or I talk to a colleague or a peer, or it's funny, like I went to a presentation a couple of years ago, and some of the people there were arguing that, in some countries we're seeing the decline of public broadcasting, but that in other countries we're seeing a resurgence of public broadcasting, and that it's really going to thrive as some countries combine their resources and centralize operations. I think for us, the UK has been a stronghold for public broadcasting for decades. I mean, it is part and parcel of British life. Public broadcasting is everywhere you look. It's the BBC is talked about every day on a political level, and whether that's supporting it or attacking it. I think the only thing we can do is kind of like what Erika said, is kind of continue to work alongside filmmakers to bring their stories to an audience. I worry about the finances. We in buyer circles hear stories of 7-figure sums for documentaries fetching 7-figure sums after film festivals. And I think while I'm so happy for those filmmakers and for those broadcasters or organizations or streamers who are going to program those films, I think what it means for us is we now need to work harder, and we need to do a bit more to then find other projects, or to find things that will continue to work for our audience. And I think a big part of that for me is now seeking out other markets, seeking out newer markets, and maybe that means using less of our budget to go into bigger festivals, or to frequent those more developed markets. Maybe it means that we'll go to Sarajevo, or to San Sebastian, or to Connecta, or to other places to find new stories. I think we'll always be here to try our best to program. As long as the public funding is available, we will be here to help program films made by independent filmmakers. I think again that about going back to like the money, I think it goes beyond just the amount that you can pay for a project. I think also about marketing and social media. We are 3 people who run Storyville, and we run everything from commissioning, from development, commissioning, acquisitions, pre-buys, delivery, translating and formatting into British technical specifications, marketing campaigns, social media campaigns, and the kind of list goes on and on and on. And I just think, goodness, how are we going to compete with that streamer out there who has a kind of multi-million-pound marketing budget and is going to be putting films on the sides of buses? And I don't know. I know it's all good for the community in some ways, but I do think, where will that leave public broadcasting in the next decade?
Yes, I think the streamers are a big threat to everything, cinema as well, theaters.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Zurich Film Festival in a panel.
It's new media versus old media, right?
Totally. Like, I was in this panel a few months ago, and one of the big film distributors and studios was on stage, and then someone from the audience who was representing the streamer, they basically had a falling out in publicly.
Wow.
Like
Interesting.
an argument in front. We were all sat in a hotel conference room about.
And what was the conversation about? What were they saying?
Just talking about how certain streamers are now entering into the feature space, whether that's feature film or feature documentary, and they're kind of gobbling up lots of resource, and they're taking a lot of talent off the market. We have this, for example, where some of our editors might be unavailable for 2 years because they're on a streaming project that's going to be a massive kind of 6-part investigative documentary series, which is amazing. You know, it sounds, that is great for the community. But, you know, a lot of people were arguing in that session that talent is being bottlenecked, talent is being taken off of the market. And this is talent that was trained and that was brought up through generations of public broadcasting training and programming. It was not pretty. I was like, goodness, I don't even want to be a fly on the wall in this session. This is so awkward. The awkward silences radiated. But I think also, you know, I've had filmmakers say to me they chase the streamers because that's what they want and that's what they think is right for their project. And I really respect that. Because if you know that is where your audience will come to your film, then you go for it. No, I'm never going to say to you, don't do it. But I've also had filmmakers say to me that they don't want to go to a streamer and be lost as a thumbnail amongst hundreds and hundreds of films. They don't just want to be on the international page of some, you know, big American streamer. They don't just want to be known as the Japanese film or the Brazilian film. They want to know that their film is going to be cared for by a team of professionals, and it's going to be shown with care to an audience, and is going to be, you know, they want to imagine that you're going to chase down the politicians at Westminster and try and get their film screened in the Houses of Parliament, or that you're going to try and do public screenings in a community center and bring people to it in ways that are lasting, that aren't just for kind of one afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard gig.
Yeah, well, I think there are more players in this game, but all the players are going to be on. They are not going to disappear. They are going to change. They are going to adapt, maybe. I don't know if, Erika, you agree with that? And before you answer that question, I quisiera invitar a todos y todas quienes están viendo este panel que hagan sus preguntas, las manden. Aprovechen que estamos con Keoni y Erika para preguntarles directamente algo o lo que quieran acerca de la televisión pública y las audiencias. So, Erika, sorry about that. I was telling the audience to do their questions to you both. So, yes, are you agree or disagree with this game that you are playing? And
no, I do agree with that. And I think Keoni brought up an important point, which is also about how a lot of talent is being pulled over to streaming projects. And a lot of those projects, I've spoken to, you know, DPs and editors who are working on projects because for the money, but they have to commit for so long because these projects are so long, and they are not able to do the projects that they really believe in. And I think it is a problem in that we're seeing fewer of the real artistic projects in the market and more of the multi-part murder series that are passing as documentaries. And I do think it's an issue. I hope that we are able to keep this as a real artistic medium and not just an assembly line of murder stories.
Mm-hmm. Yes, me too. I hope so very much. So I just wanted to ask our technical helpers if there is any question from the audience. ¿Hay alguna pregunta del público? ¿Alguien que quisiera preguntarle algo a Erika y Keoni, que están con nosotros en este momento? No? I don't think we have any question, but you have answered all my questions. And we have been talking about 1 hour, which is amazing. We have had a great and amazing chat and conversation and reflections about public television. So thank you so much, Erika and Keoni. for being here and being part of this panel of Conecta. It's been a pleasure talking to you both. And I guess you will have more one-to-one meetings this afternoon or morning for you, Keoni?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, we have one question from YouTube. This is a YouTube viewer which would like to know, sorry about that, I need to translate, so I'll read it in Spanish first. ¿Cómo puedo participar con mi ópera prima a instancias de coproducción como Docs in Progress? So this person is asking, how can they participate with their first film in instances of co-production with your channels?
Okay, so I think there's a
Maybe
couple.
commission.
It's their first film, but they're also interested in the opportunities of co-productions.
Yes.
Okay, so I think for us, the main thing for BBC Storyville is that we we are a commissioner, we're a showcaser or a programmer of feature documentaries. We work with first-time filmmakers all the time. About a third, maybe a little less than a third of our films every cycle are from first-time filmmakers. It's up and down depending on the year, to be honest, and depending on the market. The best thing for us is to submit your project to us. BBC Storyville have a submissions portal that you can submit your development to, your project to. Obviously, the more materials available, the better. I think if you have a teaser, if you have a treatment, if you have a synopsis, but
is
also,
this an open submission? Is it
correct.
around here?
This is an open submission portal. I can share this to the organizers, and I'm sure they can get the link shared out. And that's really important for us, is having an open portal where people from around the world can send their projects to us. We get a lot of projects, but we'll look at all of them and we'll respond to all of them. It might take us some time, but we will always respond within the cycle. And let you know if it's something we're interested in, if we're interested in talking more about. In terms of co-productions, I think it can work a couple of ways. I think we always encourage a filmmaker to find a co-producer that you know or that you are comfortable working with. I personally believe that that is always going to bring the best outcome. If you are co-producing, say, with a European partner or a North American partner that believes in your project and you believe in their projects, I think the work will just be better. There have been instances in the past where we have paired producers or indie filmmakers with production companies that we know and that we have worked with in the past. Because of our geographical location, those producers are usually based in Europe or in the United Kingdom. So say, for example, a Latin American project, that just might not work for you on many levels. Time difference, language barrier, working culture, things like that. I think it's possible, but again, I would say we would always encourage you to try and find a co-producer that you know and like.
Thank you so much, Keoni. And I hope Keoni has answered your question. And Erika, tell us a little bit more about co-productions with the PBS.
Yeah, and I would say that submitting through our open call portal is the best way to do it. We usually get involved in projects if we do as a co-production, and we do only a few co-productions each year, either through ITVS, which is the general PBS submission portal. And the other way we do it is when somebody submits something that's pretty much a rough cut to us, but is looking for more support, and it's something that really works for us, then we can come on as a co-producer then. I would say that the best thing to do, especially if your project is not very far along yet, is to put it on our radar early and keep us updated as to how it's going. And we will keep it if it's in the development or pre-production stage, then we'll keep an eye on it. But it's really when it gets to rough cut stage that we tend to come on with the project.
Okay, that's great. So thank you so much, Keoni and Erika, for your time, for your
Maria.
words, your ideas, and it's been a pleasure. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Conecta. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Recording stopped.